Okay, so the first step of getting the font to render in a nicer way is we want to go ahead and have a good way to go from a grid position to a pixel position. So let's say right here we want grid position to pixel position, right? I'm going to remove a few of these printfs here. Well, first of all, we don't need a printf when we're getting the string length of something. Oh, hey, you know what? You know what we don't need anymore? We don't need to do this draw level thing. That's nice. And we don't need to draw the width and the height anymore. So let's go ahead and open up our font, or not our font program. Seems to have done a bit of a crash, which is unfortunate. Are you serious? Well, let's just go ahead and open up a new instance of it. Assuming it even can. Oh, yeah, there it is. Let's go ahead and drag that off. No, I don't care about that. Let's go ahead and start a new one. So we have our grid. Sorry, rather we have our screen, right? Oh, and of course it finally started responding. So we have our grid and we have it divided up into different cells, right? So what we want to do is have a nice way to go from, hey, I am at cell 10. Give me the pixel that's in the top left of that cell. Or I'm at 20, or I'm at 11, right? And get the top pixel. That's a very big pixel. So let's have a function, and we can call this grid position to pixel position. And it is going to take in an int grid x, int grid y, and then it is going to write into an int pix x, int pix y, right? So these are going to be two pointers. Now, the reason we're doing it this way, where we're writing into pointers, is we don't have a way in a function to return multiple values. Like, we couldn't say, hey, int x y equals grid position to pixel position, right? We couldn't get an x and a y value from that, so we're going to go ahead and write into them directly. We will also need for this the grid width and the grid height and the cell width and the cell height. So we're kind of passing in a lot of things to this function. Maybe isn't great. We might want to start bundling those together into a struct, right? So we only have to pass in one thing, because like these are constant, right? They aren't ever changing. We aren't changing the dimensions of the grid and the height, so maybe we don't want to go ahead and do that. In fact, actually, now that I think about it, we don't need to pass those in because they're macros. That's a nice reason to have the macros, is it'll just replace all the text for us. So the conversion is actually pretty simple, right? Where we say, all right, if the pix x is going to equal, and remember we dereference it because it's a pointer we want to write into the value, it's going to be the grid x times the whatever I called it up here somewhere, the cell screen width, right? So when the grid x is 0, our x pixel is going to be 0, right? When it's 1, our x pixel will be whatever the cell screen width is, which in our case is going to be 50, right? And then at 2, it's going to be 100, 150, etc., right? And we can do the same thing here for grid y times cell screen height, right? Let's go ahead and make sure that runs, or just compiles, really, is all we care about because we aren't using it yet. So what I want to do now is say, let's say we have our x pixel and our, I'll go ahead and even put them on the same line, y pixel, right? Well, now let's say we have cell or grid position to pixel position. Let's say I'm going to do 1, 0, then x pix, y pix, right? And I'm going to use those right here. So we should be drawing the W. I'm going to go ahead and comment these out so we aren't drawing anything on top of it. We should be going ahead and drawing the W 1 unit over, right? Which is exactly what we see, right? Our player, we know, is a whole cell dimension, right? And we are definitely drawing the W over 1, right? So that is pretty good to know. And we could go ahead and we could keep doing that, right? Where, let's say here, we're just going to keep changing the values of that, right? So here we're going to draw it 1 over, then we are going to draw it 1 over from that, right? That's going to be 4. You'll notice this is probably the first time we've seen something like this, where we are going ahead and just we're using the same variables and we're passing them in as pointers, and just each time we call this grid position to pixel position, we are changing the value of whatever is stored there. So we don't have to keep making new variables for each glyph that we're drawing. That is handled for us. And now we have this wolf, right? The issue with it now is just that things aren't really offset, right? So what we want to do is go into our draw glyph. And remember, we were printing these offsets, right? Where it's like, hey, the offset is 10 pixels to the right and 63 pixels from the top, right? So what we want to do here for our draw glyph is we want to take the start x and the start y, and we want to actually go ahead and increment those, right? So the start x should equal the glyph.x offset, right? And the start y should equal the glyph.y offset, right? Or sorry, it should plus equal that, right? So I'm thinking here. So if we can just go ahead and look at what this does. Um, it might we might want to be doing minus equals instead of plus equals. Ew, okay, yeah. It looks like maybe um, we are wanting to do it that way. Okay. That still doesn't really look right because we should be seeing probably this W like in the center, right, and not so far down. Okay, I think let me go ahead and draw this here. So if we have our glyph, right, like this, I'm going to go with A because I kind of know a little bit about the A. So our X offset is very small, right? We barely want to offset it to the right. We do really want to offset it downwards, though, right? The thing is, though, that we don't want to offset it. We want to offset it by like this much, right? And if it's storing the offset as like this size right here, really what we want to do is take that size minus this size, and that's what would give us the offset, right? So let me go ahead and see if this helps us at all, where we're going to say that the start y is going to plus equals the glyph height plus the glyph y offset, and then the glyph width plus the glyph x offset, right? That might be even weirder. It's definitely weirder. Well, not really weirder, but it's not great. If I do minus equals there. Yeah, okay, right. That's no good. Let's go ahead and just ignore the x offset for right now. We're going to say we aren't even going to touch that. What we want is, again, we want this W to be a little bit lower, right? So it should be kind of in the center of this thing right here and not at the very top like it is. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little simpler for us. I'm going to say, hey, we aren't even going to render anything but the W, right? And now we can go ahead and let's printf the glyph height the start y, the glyph.y offset, and the glyph height plus glyph.y offset, right? And again, I made my terrible mistake. So, well, the height is 63, and there really isn't an x and a y offset. I'm wondering if that is... well, we certainly should be copying that over. Let me try A. Just want to go ahead and see what that is like. Because that's like... yeah, that really doesn't look right to me. It seems that we are not actually getting the offset values correctly. Oh, wait, no, I think I have an inkling. The x and the y offset values are real numbers, I believe. They are floats, and we're printing them as integers. So that would obviously be one reason that could break. I'm going to go ahead and move start y here, so we just print all the real, or all the whole numbers, then all the real numbers. Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, we should be changing the value of start y. So if we take... oh, no. Okay. Yeah, duh. Because our height is 63 and our offset is negative 63. So since we're just saying, hey, only draw this thing to be 63 pixels tall, we aren't worrying about the offset at all. So what if we just do that? Okay, again... okay, yeah, because we're just moving at 63 pixels down. Yeah, okay, so here is the issue. We want to be thinking about it this way. We have our cell, right? We have this big old chunk. And we have our... I'll go ahead and maybe make it a little smaller, right? We have this thing, right? And then we have a thing that is an A, right? Like that. And what we're doing is just drawing this in the top left corner. But really what we want to do is calculate its position as being in the center of this thing. So we don't want the glyph's height minus the offset. We want the cell's height minus the offset, right? So we should be able to do it this way, where we say cell screen height times the offset. Sorry, not times the, in addition to the offset. Yeah, okay. So now we have it off a little bit. Let's try a W also and see. Okay. Yeah, we try a lowercase a as well, just so, we test kind of enough cases. Oops, because I want to draw that at 3, right? Okay. I'm going to go back up here, and we want to do the same thing with the start X, right? We're going to say this should be the cell screen width. Or no, actually, here we don't even care about that, right? All we care about is just setting it over some number of pixels to the right. Because we can go ahead and look at the code in just a second. I'm going to change this to an exclamation mark. Because again, I think that's a really good test what we want. Yeah, so you see this exclamation mark is not just, over all the way flush against this, right? Which is pretty much exactly what we want. Let's go ahead and look into STB. I'm thinking that okay, so yeah, the X off, Y off are the offset in pixel space from the glyph origin to the top left of the bitmap. So, okay, yeah. So right here, like, let's say that the glyph's origin is right here, right? Because, we can think about this. In fact, actually, maybe if we take a look at, like, an S, this is a better example. Or, no, sorry. Let's look at, like, a J, right? So, a J isn't going to be from the bottom of the line up. It kind of, like, or, like a Q, right? It's kind of going to lie on the line, right? So the origin of it might be, like, right here, right? And so the offset is telling us how far from that origin to the top left pixel, right? So that might be what we're getting right here, whereas the origin of A might be right here, So the offset to right there is going to be minus 63. It's going to be like moving up, right? So if that's the case, we really want this to be let me think here. Yeah, we really only want the we only want to move this far from the top, right? If I go ahead and look at our game here, it looks like we're definitely moving a bit more, right? Like, I feel like we aren't that far from the origin, you know? So yeah, like with our A, it's going to be negative 63. So if our height is 100, so let's actually go ahead and, I think the Q or the J is going to be an interesting example. Well, okay. That kind of looks okay. I'm wondering if actually the problem is just the fact that we aren't tall enough, right? We're as wide as we are tall, which is pretty weird for drawing characters, right? Like, we can see right here that is not the case. So I'm wondering if the problem is that we're kind of like lopped off right here when we're drawing or doing our grid. So that is my working assumption. We will in the future we'll go ahead and see how true that actually is. Um, I mean, like let's just see. Um, what if we tried like 40 right here? So we'll have to be thinner. Well, yeah, the rendering of our guy got kind of messed up. Um, yeah, that doesn't seem to be really any better. So I might be quite wrong about what's going on. Um, go ahead and get rid of this printf again. I'll just comment it out. Um, what if we just say times 0.5 right here? No, because I want to do like that. Did I forget to... Why on earth is that not back to the way it was? Oh, I think... Let's go back to 16. Yeah. Wait. That seems weird. If we take our start y and we take the total height of the cell, and then we add... Oh, yeah, I think... Duh, because we are subtracting less from the height of the cell than we were before, right? Like we were taking 100 plus negative 63, and now we're doing 100 plus negative 33, or like 30, 31.5, right? Okay, so that is looking a little bit better. Again, still not great, but not quite as awful, right? We can see, okay, hey, here the J is going a little bit below the line of the W and the exclamation mark and stuff. So, again, I think we do just want to go ahead and shrink this quite a bit, shrink it horizontally. But we'll go ahead and see in the next lecture how that goes.